No.
All right, good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Ayin Daled, Masechus Yevamos. So we left off 2 lines from the top. We're continuing our question we had yesterday. We had actually a question yesterday at the beginning of the Amud yesterday, the Daf yesterday, and we deflected it. We did not answer, and the question was, if I can find it, about an orel when it comes to Meiser Sheni. Right. That was the question. So we asked yesterday, we never came to a conclusion. So an orel, we know an orel, a person who does not have a circumcision, is mentioned in the pasuk by the Karim Pesach. But so we don't know what is the status when it comes to Meiser Sheni. So 2 lines from the top, and Ayin Daled Amud Aleph. Toshma, come and listen. If a person, right, who had a circumcision, but perhaps some of there were strings or strands that were not completely removed of the orla, and therefore it would prevent it from a kosher milah. Right, not truma, you can't eat. Right, we know that we already learned that out. Not Karim Pesach, not kachim, velo b'meiser, and this is not b'meiser. So the Chared answers our question. So my love, meiser dagam. We're not referring to meiser of grains, i.e., meiser sheni. Lo meiser behema. No, this is referring to meiser behema, which is one every 10 animals. So they take it, and then it has the kedusha of meiser sheni. That's what it was referring to. An oral cannot eat that. So meiser behema, hainu kachim. What are you talking about? Meiser behema is the pasuk says kachim, right? Meiser behema is in a category of kachim. So it says according to that, milotanan pesach kachim. It says pesach and also kachim. So if you're saying, well, meiser is a category of kachim, also is pesach. Don't say pesach. So
the question is that the meiser behema goes. I don't know where it goes, but I assume it goes also to Kohen.
No, it goes to Yerushalayim. The owner has to eat it, but it has now kedusha. So the Gemara says, when it comes to the Karim Pesach, the Tani Kachim, so Bishlam Pesach Kachim. I understand why it says has both say Pesach and Kachim. Why Titana Pesach? If it just said the Arel's also Karim Pesach, Mishum Da Arelis the Pesach see it because maybe it's dark over there by Karim Pesach. It's in the pasuk. Faba Kachim name alone, but maybe by other Kachim he would be able to partake of. And so therefore he has to write that Kachim. Bitana Kachim. If it just said Kachim Havamina, I would have just thought my Kachim Pesach. I would have just thought that the word Kachim is only referring to Karim Pesach, so therefore it had to write both. Ella Meiser Behema Lamali, right? So, but Meiser Behema, why do you need to start pasuk for Meiser Behema? Why should that be separate than standard Kachim? Ella, rather we're talking about Meiser Rishon, the Rabbi Meir. No, but maybe it's only the shita of Rabbi Meir. It's talking about Meiser Rishon. He domer Meiser Rishon. Osir Lazar. Meiser Rishon. You want to talk about Arel? The Biad Arel, according to Rabbi Meir, is a special limo that's learned out when it comes to it's referring to the Meiser Rishon, not Meiser Sheni, right? Meiser Rishon just goes to the Levi, right? So therefore, only a Levi is able to partake of the Meiser Rishon that's given to him, and there is kedusha to it that he can't go ahead and share with people who are non-Levi.
Like Truma.
Right, like Truma is given to the Kohen, that can't be shared right with non-Kohanim. So too, Meiser Rishon has that status, Lefi Rabbi Meir. Tashma, come and listen. Minatani Rabbi Chia bar Rav Medifti Arel Aser b'shtei Meisros. It says within Arel is forbidden 2 Meisros. My love, Echad Meiser Dagam, Echad Meiser Behema. One is referring to Meiser Sheni, right? And the other is referring to Meiser Behema. So you see over here, it says Beferish that an Arel is forbidden to eat Meiser Sheni. So our answer is no, Hachanami Meiser Rishon Rabbi Meir. This is also referring to, no, that's not Meiser Behema and Meiser Dogon, which is Meiser Sheni. Rather, it's Meiser Rishon, according to Rabbi Meir, which you just said, and Meiser Behema. Right. No, nothing to do with it in that case. Yeah, in that case, an Arel is Aser B'shtei Meiser. So there is kedusha that an Arel would be excluded, right? Even if he was a Levi, would be excluded from Meiser Rishon. Right, very good. Toshba, come and listen. Einain, Aser, B'meiser, Umuter, B'truma, Ubepara. And Einain, so now this Bryce is going to list a couple of halachas. So an onain, a person, once again, he's in the first day of his mourning, i.e., before the burial. He's usher, but Meiser, he cannot go ahead and take Meiser Sheni. Umuter, but he is able to eat truma and ubapara, and he's able to be involved in the process of the tahara of the paraduma. Tvul yom. A tvul yom is a person who was tamei, has to go to the mikvah and wait till the evening. So he went to the mikvah, but it's not the evening yet. So it's tvul yom, usher, but truma, he can't go ahead and eat truma. However, muter b'para ubameiser, but he's muter to go ahead and para meiser. And mechusa kippurim, a person, let's say, who has to bring a carbon at the end of his tuma, right? A zav, or such a case. Matzara, right? The Yoledas, right? Other cases, a person has to bring a carbon. So before the carbon is brought, they're called mechusa kippurim, like lacking kapara, lacking atonement, right? In other words, everything is done except for the carbon. Right? Mechusa kippurim, aser b'para is aser to go ahead and partake or be involved with the paraduma. Umuter b'truma ub'maiser. Muter mechusa kippurim is muter b'truma and maiser. Now, if it's target,
when we introduce Torah here, what aspect of Torah are we
the kiddush, either the mixing of the ashes in the water, or the sprinkling of the ashes and the water onto the person who's tummy. Right? So any involved in the process, yes, or even maybe the gathering, right? So right now, and if it's true, we're talking about Arel, Nisni Arel Aser B'Truma, Umuter Repara, Ubamaiser. Now, if an Arel was Mutter with Meiser Sheni, it should also put in there, because we're talking about something which is Mutter one, and in terms of comparing and contrasting these halachas, it should have listed over there. An Arel is Aser B'Truma, as we learned earlier, and he's Mutter with Paraduma process, and also Meiser Sheni. So our answer is no, Haitana debate Rabbi Kiva. This is the Shita Rabbi Kiva. The marbele, which we saw earlier a couple blot ago, the marbele lo orel kitame, that he learns basically that an orel is just like a person who's tame. The time is learned by. So Rabbi Kiva Omer ishish l'rabas is orel. It says over there ishish to go ahead and to include an orel, so that when it says the ishish, right, ishish mizera Aaron, it's including also an orel, and therefore all of them are forbidden, because this person is like a person who's tummy. Uman Tana the Rabbi Kiva, and who is the argues Rabbi Kiva? Satana debe Rabbi Babli. This is the one who argues with Rabbi Babli. The Tanya Rabbi Rabbi says Sreifas Einin Mechus Kippurim Kshera. It says over there that the burning, right, if it was done by an onain, or if it was done by a person lacking kapara, right, he's missing his carbon, his kshera. And Rabbi Yosef Babli says the onain is kshera and mechusar kippurim is psula. After Rabbi Yitzchak Saver Arel Aser. Fine. So and over there, so that was the price that he was the one who argues with Rabbi Akiva.
Truma and Paraduma do not have to go with the regular rules of Shakti or Paranos. Is that the basic gist of it?
Well, it's its own halacha. In other words, we'll soon see the truma has its own halachas, right? In other words, that the level of kedusha doesn't have to be the same, right? In other words, truma, remember, that was a part that was given to the kohen, is approximately 1/50th given to the kohen. So who could eat, who cannot eat it, right? It's different than who can eat from a korban, who can't eat a korban, right? So there's different halachas that that come along, right? Someone's slave, right, can go ahead and, because his master's a kohen, can go ahead and eat truma, right? Right, or someone's wife, right? Certain things are only being eaten by male kohanim, right? So there's different levels of different, even kachim. There's kachikalim, right? Kachim. So there's different levels of kedusha across the board. And not only, we mentioned earlier that Rabbi Kiva, right, who says Arel is just like a tame, but even according to Rabbi Yitzchak Savar Arel also b'maiser, and Arel is also b'maiser. The Amar Rabbi Yitzchak mimaylo Arel also b'maiser. So how do you know that Arel is also b'maiser? Sheni nemar mimenu b'maiser, v'nemar mimenu b'pesach. It says the word mimenu by maiser, right? It says lo chalti v'oni mimenu v'libarti menu, right? We'll soon see it says it 3 times in each place. So it says mimenu by maiser. Also says mimenu by Karan Pesach. Mami meno Pesach Arel Asaba. It says the word mimenu by Karan Pesach, and the Arel's also there is happy meno Amar Meiser. So too it says the word mimenu multiple times, as we'll soon see, is said by Ma'aser Sheni. Therefore, Arel is also Arel Aser Bo. And Mufne, and it must be free. We saw this concept a couple days ago, right? It must be open for Gzer Shava. In other words, the word is not used for another limud, because if the word is already taken up for another limud, so that's the reason why it's in limud. Don't necessarily compare it to another halacha. It's used for something else. But if it's not used for anything else, therefore it's free to darshan from. And there, since it's free to darshan from, therefore we can compare Meiser to Pesach when it comes to an Ara. Dila Mufne, because if it's not open to darshan, you can ask, you can say, no, maybe the reason why an Arel is Aser by current Pesach is it has chumras, it has pigel, right? It has Naisar, it has Tomei, these different halachas when it comes to when it comes to the current Pesach, right? Which do not apply by Ma'aser Sheni, right? So Gemara answers yes, yes, it is open to darshan. So my mufne. So which one is open? So Rabbi Yitzchak tlasa mimenu ksivi bepesach. Right? It says the word mimenu written 3 times by Karim Pesach. Right? 2 psukim in a row in Shmos Yud Beis Tes and Yud. Right? Those are the articles on the side. Right? It says Al tachlu mimenu no shav shav mayim keeps leis roshah krav kirbo. And then it says v'lo yisisim mimenu ad boker v'hanasar mimenu ad boker beis yisrofa. So it says over there 3 times. Right, right. So it says 3 times, and earlier it says so chad legufe. One to teach you that it only applies to it and not the other parts of Pesach, i.e., any other halachas there. The chad gzer shava, and one is used for gzer shava. The chad, and what's the third one used for? So it's a machlokes over here. So it's the question of the Naisar, right? Naisar mimenu ad boker beish tisrov is a machlokes as to whether that is a lav, additional lav, or it's only another additional asay to go ahead and burn it, right? According to the opinion, who hold say. So I did the chsiv Naisar, chsiv nami menu. Since it says return Naisar, it also says mimenu again. Boker Shenis, that one says no. Really, the halacha is that you don't have to burn it the next morning, i.e., Yom Tov morning, right? You get the additional morning, you get the first day of Chalmai to go ahead and burn it, right? Boker Shenis, so I did the chsiv ad boker, chsiv nami meno. Therefore, it says ad boker, right? Ad boker. So therefore, it says also mimeno. So it says mimeno 3 times there. One is extra by the current Pesach. And also, it also says mimenu 3 times by Meiser. Right, that's in the Chaf Avav Yudal. It says lachalti mimenu v'loibarti mimenu b'tami v'lonesati mimenu l'meis. Right, it says it 3 times. Sachad l'gufe, v'chad the Rabbi Avo, Rabbi Yochanan. The one is like Rabbi Avo, Rabbi Yochanan, which is right the drasha we said earlier, right? Who said that he matered, right, the burning of truma that was tameh, right, to go ahead and use in other purposes. If it becomes tameh, you can go ahead and burn it there. So that one was used for that, right? And the avachad, the Reish Lakish, for Reish Lakish, and what was his? Joshua Dam Reish Lakish, Rav Samya Minai, the Meiser Sheni Shenitma Shemot Elisaicha. How do you know the Meiser Sheni became tameh? It's mutter to go ahead and use it to anoint, right? Shnamar v'nasati mimenu lemeis. Right, a place upon a mace. L'meis sudelonesati halachai dumi the mace. Right, it says no, I didn't do for mace, but for to someone who's alive, similar to they can use it the same way a live person would use it for a dead person. Right, the mace nazati and it's eza davar sheshava b'chai mace. And what is a way to consume it or to use it the same way a person is dead or alive? That was to anoint or put it on, right? You can't eat it, right? That person can't eat, or he can't use it for other ways, but you can use it, I guess, to spread upon the person of sicha. So we just proved that the 3 menos by Pesach, one is available for the Gzer Shava, and the menos by Meiser, those were all used for their own purposes. So Maskov Ramar Zutra of Ema. So first, just going back on that point, the Ema lekachlo aram tachrichin. Maybe it's telling you that you can't go ahead that in other words that or you can go ahead. They were talking about the tuma, the Meiser Sheni which came nitma, right? Can be used for aron tachrichin, I guess, to be used for burial purposes. Some Rav Huna Breda V'Yeshua Mimenu Migufo. It doesn't mean they can go ahead and sell it and use it for that money for other purposes for a mace. What does it mean to use it for a mace? It itself is used for a mace. How do you use the truma, the tmeya, the oil tmeya? There you use it by sicha. And Rav Ashi lo nasati, it says over there, lo nasati, I didn't place it. Dumya deloy chalti, similar to I didn't eat. Malon magufa, when you say I didn't eat it, meaning right that it itself, afkan migufo. So too over here it means migufo. I didn't when it was tame. In other words, to anoint. The Gemara says v'akati mufna, and it's still open mitzad echad. Right. So we said, well, all three are used in the case of Ma'aser Sheni. And there was one extra when it comes to Korban Pesach. So it's only mufna, it's only open mitzad echad from one of the sources, right? So what is open here? By it says mimenu an extra time by Korban Pesach. So it's extra. So you use it for the make a drasha to learn out orel, right? From so Ma'aser Sheni of an orel by Ma'aser Sheni from an orel from Pesach. But this only works out. This works out according to one opinion. It says even if it's open on one side, then you can't ask on it. That you can't learn out if only one side is open. But you can also ask a question. Where are you going to say that? Because you can say, hey, Korban Pesach has pigel, noisar, and tame, right? As opposed to Ma'aser Sheni, which does not. So so it says, no, really, one of the mimenus by Ma'aser Sheni is open. Which one? Number 2. The one we said we use it for Rabbi Avo's drasha of Truma Tamea can be burnt, right? For fuel. That we actually don't need Rabbi Avo to learn from the pasuk of Mimenu. Rather, we can learn that halach out from Rav Nachman Amar Ravua. Nafka Damarav Nachman Amar Rabbi Ravua. My dixi was pasuk mean Vanin he nasati lecha es mishmeres trumasi. Right. So B'shtei says b'trumasi. Right. B'shtei trumos hakas medaber. It's talking about 2 types of trumas. Achas truma tahara, v'achas truma tameya. One truma tahira, right, eating, and the other truma tameya. You can't eat truma tameya, so how are you going to use it? You burn it, right? V'marachmana lecha. It says over here, lecha, it's yours. Shachatia lasacha tachas tavshilecha. Right? It can be for you. They can be used. Yeah. Truma. Yeah. Truma. Right. Yeah. Right. So it said, therefore, multiple trumos. Right, and therefore both of them are both of them are permitted for consumption. Therefore, it turns out that one of the menus are extra. Therefore, you have a menu by Korban Pesach, which is extra. Menu by Ma'aser Sheni, which is extra. It's used for Gzer Shava to conclude that an orel, just like by Korban Pesach, is aser by Ma'aser Sheni. So we answer that question. Fine. Going back to the Mishnah, right? We just darshan one word of the Mishnah. All this Gemara until now was ha'orel, right? The next line of our Mishnah says ha'orel v'chol ha'tmeim lo yechlu b'truma, right? An orel, which we just covered. Now we're done speaking about the orel, person non-circumcised. Now we go v'chol ha'tmeim. All people who are tamei, v'chol ha'tmeim cannot eat truma. Now let's see what's going on here. 2 lines from the bottom. V'chol ha'tmeim. So we know, from everybody knows. The pasuk says. Now this pasuk is those who who have the art scroll. It was the first pasuk that was brought. It was the first pasuk that was brought on today's Amud, right? Ish mizera Aaron v'utzarua, right? So it says over here, Ish mizera Aaron v'utzarua zav v'chulei. So ezi davar shava bizarro shel Aaron. What is something that is equal to anybody who's who comes from Aaron, right? The descendant of Aaron. Haviyomer zotruma, right? Because that's who is said by Zacharim and Akevos, right? Because by Kachim is only said to male and not by not female. So who is going to be eaten by male and female? Haviyomer zotruma. That's truma, and it says over there. Right, says you can't eat until you're tar. So we see that truma, which is pasuk is referring to, can only be eaten by people who are not tamei. You have to be tar to eat your truma. Now, Gemara says the ema because of a shok. Maybe it's referring to by because of a shok by a shlamim. When you go ahead and you separate the chaz of a shok, you separate the breast and the thigh, and you give it over to the Kohanim, and they eat it there, right? So maybe, and that's referring that, and I guess the females can also partake of that. So maybe it means that can only be eaten with tahara, but truma you don't need to be with tahara. So my answer is no, eino b'chazeres. As we saw a couple days ago, once again, that when a woman goes back to her father's house, she was married to a Yisrael, and she can no longer eat truma. Her husband dies, no children. She can go back to her father's house. She can go back to her father's house only to eat truma, but she can no longer partake in the chaz of a shok. So therefore, since she's called eino b'chazeres, she can't go back and eat the chaz of a shok. Therefore, we're now referring to the chaz of a shok in this case of requiring tahara, and therefore it's referring to truma, and truma has to be b'tahara. So what do you mean? Truma nami ain't a b'chalala. Well, truma nami is not eaten by everybody. What about a chalal? So our answer is a chalala lav zera Aaron. A chalala, or a person's chalala, is not considered to be zera Aaron, right? So if she's a chalala, she's not considered zera Aaron. So that's not included in bnei Aaron. So therefore, bnei Aaron is referring to people of Aaron, not chalalim, and therefore it's referring to truma. Truma has to be eaten b'tahara. Fine. Umay dahai adashetar adika harav shemesh. Who says until it becomes tahor? Right. This whole time we're including you have to be tahor. How do you become tahor? You hit the mik, right? You wait for the night, and now you are tahor, right? Who says that's the case? Maybe that's what it means. Maybe we're referring to a person who is required to bring a korban for his purity, right? There's certain ones. A zav person is, or a metzora, he's tummy for 7 days, and then afterwards, on the 8th day, he brings his korban. Maybe we're talking about that type of severity, that type of person who is tummy, that he has to go ahead and bring a korban. So it says, no, like that, you would not think that. The Tanit Bei Rabbi Shmuel. Bezav bal shtei riyos uv metzora muzgar hakasam adaber. It's referring to, right? The pasuk says ishish, right? It mentions saru or zav. Now there's different levels of a person who has leprosy, who is saras, or different levels of a person who is a zav, who has some sort of seminal drip, or he's tumazav, right? So in terms of if one person only sees 2 days in a row, not 3, such a person is tameh for 7 days still, but he doesn't have to bring a korban at the end. Or a person has saras, right? And he's put in quarantine for 7 days per the CDC, right? For 7 days, or Kohanim, right? Then they come back and they recheck him, and he got better. He was still tameh for 7 days, but he doesn't bring a korban. So maybe the zav we're talking about is not a zav who saw 3 days and has to bring a korban, or a metzora who was muchlat, right, who has to bring a korban. Maybe we're talking about people who don't bring korbanos, right, who are not required, right? And therefore, it's telling you that those people, when they become tahor, so do me the tummy nefesh, just like a person becomes tummy nefesh. A person touches a dead body, he's tummy for 7 days, but he doesn't bring a korban at the end. So So, and a person who's a tummy nefesh doesn't bring a not by kapara. Saninami lat be kapara ninu. So too, these zav and metzora are also referring to people who are not required to go ahead and bring a korban. So the ema hani mili dela bar kapara, right? Maybe that which says you don't need to bring the korban is only referring to people who are not required to bring kapara. The bar kapara. But if someone is required to bring a korban, kapara, they can only eat shruba until they bring until they bring the korban. In other words, who says over here, all you have to do is wait until the evening to go ahead and bring, even if you didn't bring a korban? Maybe if we're talking about, that's only referring to people who are not required to bring korbanos. But if it would be a person who required to bring korbanos, maybe they couldn't just eat shuma at night. They'd have to wait till the next day, the 8th day, after they bring the korban. Only then can they eat shuma. And furthermore, other time we learn in Mishnah, famous Mishnah, Tovel, the Allah person goes to the mikvah. Now he during the day, so he went to the mikvah. The Allah, he gets up, gets out of the mikvah. He is now mutter b'maiser shein, right? A tvul yom. Now, as we see over here, this Mishnah, a tvul yom is mutter, right? That's he is mutter b'maiser. Erev Shemesh, a person with a mikvah, and the night the sun sets, Eichel b'truma, he can now eat truma. So you need those two. It's not just a tefillah yom, but he also has to be Erev Shemesh. And Hevi kapara, and the next day when one who is obligated to bring a korban, he brings his korban, then Eichel b'kachim, he eats kachim. So it's 3 levels here. Meiser Sheni, the lowest, truma, then kachim. And there's also right, and there's also 3 levels of tahara. There's tefillah yom, Erev Shemesh, and Meiser kapara, and bring your korban. Now, Manala, and where do we know these halachas from? Amarav Chiza, Tlasa Krai Ksiv. There's 3 psukim. Ksiv, it says, V'lo yoichel min hakadshim, ki rachatz b'sara b'mayim. You should not eat kachim, or something which is holy, doesn't necessarily mean kachim, unless you go to the mikvah, right? Unless you go in the mikvah. Harachatz tar. Sounds like once you go to the mikvah, even you don't eat sunset, you don't eat your korban, you're tar. The Ksiv, another pasuk says, Uba shemesh v'tayir, right? Right, and it says over there, once the sun comes up, the time becomes tar, and then another one says after the sun goes down, he becomes tar, and then he can eat from holies, from something which is kodesh. Uksiv, and the third pasuk says the Kohen will make him tahor. How is that? By karbanos, right? Only then you're tar. So how cates that? How do we do this? One pasuk says you just go to the mikvah. Another pasuk says you got to wait till it's night. Another pasuk says the kohen has to make you tar. How cates that? So how do we resolve this difficulty? So kan la meiser. One is meiser sheni. You just need the mikvah. Kan the truma. You need the mikvah at night, right? Then kan the kachim, and the other one, when you're obligated to bring a korban, that's referring to kachim. So maybe let's switch it around. Who says that's the order? So maybe truma we switch it around. Maybe truma is the most lenient. No, me stava truma adifa sheched, right? Machmas. This is the the hints before, because by truma, right, one could be chayiv misa b'shemayim, right? If he eats it when he's tamei, right, and chaymesh, right, is a tack on a 5th. Pay is pidyon, right? He goes as he redeems it. He can redeem it, and zara cannot be eaten by non-kohanim. So he says, since it has those qualities, therefore truma is more chamer than ma'aser sheni. So he says, either have a ma'aser adifa shechein hadas tav, right? Which is actually 5 of them, right? The hay is referring to havas makom, is to bring to the place. Dalet is vidui. Samach is iser asava einain. Right? The test is tamei, right, or tuma. You can't go ahead and burn it if the ma'aser sheni is tamei, and the bays is referring to beer. So those are required by ma'aser sheni, but not by truma. So Gemara says no. Afilu hachi misa adifa. Since truma has misa is associated with misa b'shemayim, therefore we'll say that truma is marchamer. Therefore, we'll say that the first level, once you become a little bit tar, i.e. it's full yom, he could partake of ma'aser sheni and not take, and he can't have truma. And Rav Amar, even below Misa Adifa, right? Even without saying that Misa is Adifa, Nami Lamas Amarta, right? You still can't, even if you didn't have that trump card, a Misa applying to Truma and not applying to Ma'aser Sheni, you still wouldn't be able to say that the Truma can be eaten or by Tful Yom. So Amakra, it says over there, Nefesh. It says nefesh. Ezu davash shavu chol nefesh. Habiyomer ze ma'aser. Because over nefesh, what is something that's equal by all nefesh, i.e., not just kohanim, right? That would be referring to ma'aser sheni, which applies to Kohen, Levim, and Yisrael. The Akati. Maybe you can say this. Hani milehechad alav par kapara. Maybe this is only referring to somebody who's not obligated to bring kapara. But hechad bar kapara adam I see kapara. Maybe we're only talking about somebody who doesn't have to bring a korban at the end of their tumah. I.e., we're not talking about a zav those people. But if those people, right, if a person was a zav and he's required to bring a korban, he saw 3 days required to bring a korban. So maybe he can't even eat the ma'aser sheni, not when he's at tefillah yom, or not when he's Erev Shemesh. He has to wait till till he does brings his korban, and only then can he have ma'aser sheni, truma, and kachim. But he's required to bring a korban. He is only that. Some Rabbaye, Trey Kraig. There's 2 psukim in this written. B'yoledes, by a woman who gives birth, right? When who gives birth, she's tmeya for 40 days or 80 days, right? Depending on that. So ksiv ad milay simei tahara. until the end of her, right, the days of her tuma. So keva and shemilu yameha tahara, right? It says until the days. It doesn't say she brings the carbon. It says until the days are up, right? Once the days are over, then she's tahara. And then there's another passage that says she becomes tahor not when the days are done, but when the days are done, and she brings the carbon. Hakeitzad. So which one is it? Is it just, you got to count the days, or you got to count the days that bring the carbon? Why to the psukim? So it must be no hakeitzad. How is that possible? Kan l'truma, kan l'kachim. One is by truma. By truma, all you need is the days. Once the 40 days are up, at night, Erev Shemesh, you can go ahead and eat truma, just like we've been saying till now. Erev Shemesh, the sun goes down, you can eat. You have your truma at night. And kan l'kachim. When it comes to kachim, only then it's not only you got to wait your days, but you got to wait your days and bring your carbon. So let's flip it around. Let's say that just the days you can eat kachim, and the days in the carbon, only then are you permitted to the truma. So the Gemara says no. Mistaber kaidesh chamor. Right now, hektish or chamor shechein. Right, pankachas. Right, because we find by it pigel neisar carbon. Right, the ayin is meila, chaf is kares. Right. And the samach is it's asul einin, right? So the Gemara says, since those apply by kachim and not by truma, we'll say that's more severe. So it says no, adrab, truma chamur, maybe truma chamur shechein machbaz, right? Misvei shemayim, ches is chaimesh, pei is pidyon, zayin is zar. So maybe it applies there. So our answer is no, hinach nafisha. Right? Since there's more that apply by kachim, right? So the score was 6-4. So therefore, kachim is bar chamer. So the Gemara says no. And Rava says once again, Rav Amar even below hinach nafishin, even if you have more, even if it wasn't more, you still wouldn't be able to say lo masi samarta. Why? Because Amar Krav v'chiper Allah hakohen v'tahera. Right? The pasuk says, and the Kohen will make, right, will bring the atonement, i.e. will bring the carbon v'tahera, and they will become tar mechlal she tameya. So it can infer from there that she was tameya. Right? And if you would think they were talking about kachim, so right? That says over there that you will touch the meat and become tamei, right? You can't become tamei. Rather, it can't be talking about something which that if you would have touched, it would be tameya, because that we know is referring to by kachim. If you're tamei, you can't go ahead and touch it. So what is it we're talking about? What is it? So what is it in this case that we're talking about? Where the pasuk says that even without that your Torah, even before the day of, i.e. the night, it would only be talking about referring to truma. That truma is something that you don't need to bring the carbon, but when you bring the carbon, which we're talking about, that pasuk was talking about kachim, because that pasuk was talking about babazar sheyiga b'chol tamei, right? So that was referring to kachim. So therefore, this other pasuk must be talking about truma, and that truma is permitted at night without the carbon, but the kachim is not permitted until the carbon is brought. And master Rav Shishi Barad Ravidi umi matzid amarto truma ksivi hacha. And can you say it's talking about truma here? Vatani, where the Brisa says daber el bnei Yisrael. The pasuk says daber el bnei Yisrael. Eli el bnei Yisrael. It's referring to people who bnei Yisrael. Gyeres v'shivcha mishachreres minayin. So how do we know that a woman who converted or shivcha was freed minayin? Tamaleimar isha. It says isha. Truma, and if you're talking about truma, so gyeres v'shivcha b'nai smicha truma. Right? So if can a gyaris or shivcha, right? They're not kohanim, right? They're not the bas kohen, right? So they can't eat truma. So what is it referring to? It can't be referring to truma because the pasuk is talking about isha came to include a gyaris and a shivcha mishachareres, a freed slave. So Amarava, velo, you can't say that. Why not? Vaksiv, it says over there, b'chol kodesh leisiga. It says over there. Right? B'chol kodesh leisiga l'rabos hatruma. We darshan over there. It says anything that you touch, right? If he's tummy, you can't touch, right? So it comes to include truma. So you see, the pasuk is talking about truma. So Ella krai mile kachashiv. Rather, the pasuk you can't say the pasuk is only talking about truma. In other words, this pasuk has multiple halachas, some of which apply to truma and some of which apply to kachim. And therefore, you can't say this pasuk is only talking about truma, nothing else, because we see it says over there, Isha, to include a gear as a shivcha, but she's also not referring to only that because it says b'chol kodesh leisiga, which comes to include truma, and therefore tomorrow or Sunday Mitzvah Hashem will continue this conversation regarding truma. All right, shkoyach.